It's Tuesday, the 21st of March, 2023. Welcome to the Fast Five by Fear and Greed, where we give you the top 5 business stories you need to know in just 5 minutes. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, we have 5 stories to get through in 5 minutes, so we better jump straight in. Story number 1, the Reserve Bank has moved quickly to assure investors that Australia's banking system remains strong after the collapse and rescue of one-time European banking giant Credit Suisse.
Yes, the Reserve Bank's Assistant Governor Chris Kent yesterday said the Reserve Bank was kept informed of events over the weekend and that the current financial crisis is one of the many things the Central Bank Board will take into account when it makes its decision next month on interest rates. Kent called for perspective around what's going on, saying the banking sector is in much stronger shape globally than it was 10 years ago, and regulators, markets and banks have put a lot more capital in place. He said the collapses reflected a few institutions that were poorly managed and did not meet high enough standards. In contrast, Australian banks are unquestionably strong and liquid, he said. So how is this crisis playing out in Australia? Well, look, anyone who wants to get a loan is going to find it just a touch harder because banks will be taking a very close look at credit quality. The Reserve Bank will certainly be keeping in mind what's going on when it deliberates on interest rates in a couple of weeks' time. The Credit Suisse disaster adds to the case to pause rate rises. The converse of that is banks make more money when rates are rising, and now is actually the time you want banks to be making money, at least in a broad economic sense. Corporate activity might take a hit. The biggest upcoming float is that of Virgin. Plenty of chat yesterday that while it isn't in peril, it could be delayed because of the instability in markets. And financial markets remain skittish. The local share market was down 1.4% yesterday. The companies that operate overseas, the big miners, the energy companies, places like Cochlear and Brambles, they're the ones that were actually hit hardest.
Sean, story number 2, Parliament was back in session yesterday and it will be again next week as well. It's the final sitting weeks before the federal budget, which seems to have come around very, very quickly. Not surprisingly, the AUKUS deal to buy submarines got a bit of an airing yesterday.
The reason it's come around so quickly is that they actually don't sit for about 6 weeks after this until the budget. There you go. The gist of the government's rhetoric yesterday was that Australia needs to be able to operate long-range nuclear-powered submarines to protect its trade routes. When it came to questions from the opposition, they were quick to raise power prices. Pardon the pun, with opposition leader Peter Dutton asking Albanese to name one suburb where power prices have fallen since the 2022 election. It's slightly ironic that Labor is boasting about its defence credentials and the Libs about their cost of living credentials. Anyway, Mr Albanese yesterday also said his Indian counterpart Narendra Modi will travel to Australia for the next Quad Leaders Summit in May. He expects the two countries to conclude a comprehensive economic cooperation agreement by the end of the year. Both the Prime Minister and Peter Dutton paid their respects to the ADF personnel on the 20th anniversary of the invasion of Iraq. Well, that came as a former Special Forces soldier was arrested yesterday over an alleged war crime in Afghanistan in the first case to emerge from a specially established investigation agency.
Sean, on to story number 3 now, and the gold diggers have done pretty well in recent weeks as the price of the precious metal heads towards $2,000 an ounce.
Yes, the financial crisis is helping the gold stocks. So Northern Star, the second biggest gold company, jumped 8.5% yesterday to $1,178. It's up nearly 70% since late September, which was its most recent low. Gold Road Resources, De Grey Mining, Perseus Mining, all doing really well. Evolution Mining jumped 10.5%. It also commenced operations on a new production unit yesterday. That helped. Newcrest Mining is the market leader. It's up 60% since September, including another 5% yesterday, but that's also under takeover offer, so that's a bit different. Certainly the gold diggers are doing well.
Sean, story number 4. I think this is really interesting. Holders of fixed-rate mortgages whose terms are expiring are actually shifting to other banks, which really highlights the competitiveness of the mortgage market at the moment.
70% of bank customers whose fixed mortgage rates expired in the past 6 months refinanced with another bank, according to analysis by the Australian Banking Association. On average, 2,370 people are refinancing their mortgage every working day. Incredible. Of the 309,000 mortgages refinanced over the last 6 months, only 94,000 have gone with their existing lender. According to the Financial Review, the ABA submission to the Senate Select Committee on Cost of Living says there's no mortgage cliff coming because people will progressively roll off fixed-rate mortgage loans over a 2-year period.
Okay, last story. Story number 5. A bunch of big US companies are now encouraging staff to come back to the office, with Meta Platforms, the owner of Facebook, leading the way.
Chief Executive Officer Mark Zuckerberg is now encouraging staff to, and I quote, find more opportunities to work with your colleagues in person, end quote. Meta is the latest high-profile company to walk back lenient work-from-home policies, joining others like Amazon, Starbucks and Walt Disney. It comes as office occupancy across the US this year finally broke 50%. First time since the pandemic began. A lot of the big financial service firms like JP Morgan Chase, Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley have mandated a certain number of days in the office. Interesting that the tech companies are going down that path.
You mentioned Starbucks, Sean. I find it amusing that they had a lenient work from home policy. It's kind of hard to make a long black via Zoom, isn't it?
Possibly.
All right, there we go. The top 5 business stories in 5 minutes. Thank you very much, Sean.
Thank you, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 21st of March, 2023. Remember to hit follow on the podcast. If 5 minutes isn't enough, you can find our longer daily show called Fear and Greed wherever you listen to podcasts. It also comes with a whole bunch of interviews. Today's chat is a great one for investors. I'm Michael Thompson, and that was the Fast 5 by Fear and Greed. Have a great day.